Alright, peace and greetings, YouTubers. So the 2016 presidential election, let's just jump right into it. Let me go ahead and be transparent. Donald Trump is symbolic of what America has always been and what America will always be as long as a certain power structure that is in place continues to operate. And that's a racist society, and there's no shock. Now, I know a lot of you are already ready to come into the comment section and say I'm race baiting, but this election and the results on Tuesday have literally proved and verified every single statement I have ever made on this channel since I started it. Every conversation about race that I've had on this channel, every video that I've made talking about racism from a structural standpoint, and the fact that in reality, white people as a collective really don't want to see anybody else do better than them. That's the reality of America, and that's the reality of what is. So let's jump into this election. And I do have to say this. Every argument that I'm getting ready to make in this video is coming from a structural standpoint, as I do with my other videos, which means that I'm speaking about a system that is currently in operation that either disadvantages or advantages groups of people on a macro scale, based on the decisions and the ideologies of white people as a collective. That's the reality. Everybody knows that in this country, white people run the show. Maybe as individuals, white people don't really run and hold a whole lot of power, but as a collective, and because they are the majority population, they run this show. They run this country. That's the way it has always been. So the arguments that I'm going to make in this video are speaking from a structural standpoint and how the decisions of white people as a collective affect everybody else. So if you as a white person feel that you don't identify with that collective, that's fine, because to be fair, that's not every single white person in America, and that's fine. And you can go ahead and tell me how you memorized the I Have a Dream speech in 3rd grade, and maybe you had a black girlfriend in college at one point because you wanted to experiment. But at the end of the day, I'm speaking from a structural level, and the purpose of this video is not to appease the individuals who feel that they are saving the world because they are in a position where they can tolerate people who are not white, because the fact that you have to tolerate me is a problem in itself. But anyway, and like I said, even if you don't identify as that collective, you still benefit from the decisions of that collective. So let's get back into this. So when you look at the demographics of who voted for who, all of America was united with where they stood politically, except for white people. And that's why I found it very entertaining that, you know, Barack Obama and Donald Trump and all these people went out of their way to go, well, now it's time to be unified, and now it's time for unity because we're all Americans. And I'm like, to be honest, all of America was unified with where they stood except for white people. 88% of black Americans voted against Donald Trump. 65% of Latinos voted against Donald Trump. 65% of Asians voted against Donald Trump. When you talk about the other groups, they voted against Donald Trump. The only group of people who do not vote against Donald Trump at a higher rate were white people, because they only did it at a rate of 37%. Now, to go to, and the thing about it is the white voter electorate was 70% of the entire electorate as a whole. That was the mass majority. All right, minorities only make up about 38% or 28% of the entire population of the United States anyway. So, as a whole, no matter how much we would like to fight, if white people don't agree, that argument is dead. They get their way, and that's exactly what happened. Now, I know people are going to be like, oh, well, that's really not a major majority if you're talking about Asians and Latinos, because 1/3 of them voted for Trump. And I'm like, well, if we want to talk about the Latino community, a lot of people in the Latino community identify as white. Even though they're Latino, they identify as white because they don't want to be associated with other marginalized groups within the Latino diaspora. The same can be said for the Asian community. And if we talk about the Asian community, one, they barely even participate in the electoral process anyway. They are a small demographic of the electorate as a whole. And so white people showed us where they stood politically. And I found that interesting. And people were so shocked because they were like, I can't believe that this is how white people voted, or this is how we voted. I'm just so shocked. And I'm like, what are you shocked at? You have to look at the reality of what it is when it comes to how America operates. White America, well, not even really white America to be honest, but America voted Barack Obama in office twice. What does that mean? That means that Barack Obama created a space where there was opportunity for growth for other demographics aside from white people as a collective. And what that meant is, if Hillary were to win, she would have allegedly expanded and continued in the same realm that Barack Obama did, which meant that more opportunities would open for different groups of people. Meaning the Supreme Court may have had somebody who was Asian, or may have had another black or a real black person on there. Clarence Thomas does not count. Okay, if Uncle Ruckus is a real person from the Boondocks, it's Clarence Thomas. Maybe there was going to be a Latino male on the Supreme Court, or maybe somebody who was Middle Eastern on the Supreme Court, or maybe somebody who was Native American on the Supreme Court. And then you talk about the other positions of power within this country. So people who are like Secretary of Defense, and people who are over education and over commerce and the Treasury Department and all these different things. It opened the lane for opportunity for other people. If you look at Barack Obama's cabinet, that is one of the most diverse cabinets ever in the history of any presidential cabinet. And here's the thing about diversity. Diversity doesn't mean that you just get somebody who's of a different race and put them on your team. Diversity means that if you get somebody of a different race, not only are they a different race, but they represent the culture that is associated with the race that they come from, and they're going to make decisions that also pertain to the ideals of the race that they come from. So a lot of times people go and get a token black person who is anti-black everything, which is what's the sheriff from Milwaukee, the black guy? Was it David Clark or something like that? That guy. He's a prime example of that. Somebody like Donald Trump will probably put somebody like that sheriff in charge of something. And that sheriff is somebody who's 100% anti-black everything. Everything about black people, even though he is a black man, he does not identify as black. He doesn't align with black people. He has his white wife. And if he could, he would trade that skin in so fast to look like this. And so when you're talking about diversity, Hillary Clinton most likely would have continued that trend. And what does that mean? That means that not only did you have 8 years of Barack Obama, but you would have had another possible 8 years of Hillary Clinton, meaning 16 years of somebody chipping away at that white power structure. And that meant that white people would lose a little bit too much. And they weren't going to give that up, because white people recognize that they run this country, and they recognize that as long as they are still the majority, they have to do a whole lot of things, and they have to do a whole lot to make sure that when they lose that majority in a few more decades, that the elements of that power structure are still strongly in place, so that they don't lose that power that they currently have, or that they think they have. That's the reality of what is. And so what was so interesting when you look at the voter demographics is when you look at white women, for all of the conversations of feminism and all of the conversations of women's rights and equality, look how they voted. Look how they voted as a collective. Okay? Hillary Clinton couldn't even get the white woman vote. Okay, 2/3 of white women voted for Donald Trump. That should tell you something, you know what I mean? And so I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, I didn't vote for Trump because, I'm not racist. I voted because of his policy. But my argument to that is this. This is a man who literally offended and will, in the long term, basically disadvantage every single group of people in this country except for white men. And for you to still go out of your way and vote for him because you think that you like one piece of his policy, even though, to be honest, he never explained to any of you what his policy would be. He never gave you any detailed descriptions of how any of his plans or his promises would be accomplished. He was running on just ego and pride. And for people to still vote for him, I'm sorry, that makes you a passive racist. And that makes you somebody in denial, because you're willing to bypass the struggles and the oppressions of everybody else in order for you to get one or two little things that you think are important to you, and you're saying to hell with everybody else. And so I found that very interesting. So going back to white women, because I was like, I'm going to get to y'all. So the whole feminism movement, it goes to show you that the feminism movement is not something that's about equality for everybody. It's about equality for white women, and basically more so something to keep the white power structure going. Because when you think of feminism, you think of something that means it's women in America fighting for the right to just be able to exist in their own skin and be treated fairly, which sounds like a great idea, and I'm all for that. However, when you look at the reality of what it is when it comes to the feminist movement, it's a very racist movement, and it's a movement that only includes white women. Every other group of women are not a part of that movement. And the reason is because if women were to get all the rights that they should be getting, that means that white women have to share those rights with everybody else. Something that white men don't have to do, because there's not a thing called menism. So because white men already have all these rights, they don't have to share stuff with the rest of us. However, when it comes to feminism, when you give women the rights that they deserve to have and all the rights that they've been fighting for, white women have to share that with black women, they have to share it with Arab women, they have to share it with Asian women, they have to share it with Latino women, they have to share it with Native American women, the immigrant women that are coming into the country. And a lot of white women are also very racist, and because of that power structure, they're not willing to give that up. And because if you think about it, by them voting for Trump, they protect the white power structure. And so the white power structure also protects white women to an extent. It doesn't protect everybody else. So in my opinion, a lot of white women continue to vote for Trump because they recognize that no matter who won, they were going to be okay. Because to be very, no, I'm not going to say that part. I'm going to skip it because I don't feel like fighting today. But when you look at feminism, it's BS, in my opinion, because it's not inclusive. What I do support is womanism. And womanism is something that's rooted within the community of black women. And because black women, in my opinion, are the most nurturing demographic of the country. They're the demographic of the country that will give anybody the clothes off their back, and they are always very supportive of everybody and inclusive of everybody into their movements. When it comes to black empowerment, well, I'm not gonna say black empowerment because that's our thing. Y'all stay out. That ain't got nothing to do with y'all. But when it comes to womanism or the rights of women, black women have always been very inclusive. And I take that back. Even with the black power thing, black women will take the time to try and share and educate other groups of people about their struggles and why it's important to them. And so, but like I was saying, black women are very inclusive. So womanism is something where it's basically women still fighting for all of those rights, but it's run by black women. And not only that, but black women are including other groups of women. So Latino women are welcome, Asian women are welcome, all these other groups of women are welcome. And not only do they empower themselves as women, but they also empower men. But not from a male chauvinistic racist standpoint where it's, well, men get to be in charge and we get to call all the shots as usual. No, what it means is they empower men from the standpoint of social responsibility and vulnerability. Empowering men to say, it's okay that you're not feeling good this day. It's okay for you to cry, my brother. I still support you. You are still strong, and we are a team. Or when I'm talking about social responsibility, my brother, you are so smart, you are so intelligent, and your community needs you, and this, that, and the third, and you have to be, the this and that for your community, so make sure that you work hard and strive hard. And so womanism is something that empowers everybody and ensures that in order for everybody to, ascend to the higher heights, that you need the support of each other, and you need that camaraderie of love and nurturing. And so womanism, in my opinion, is what feminism should be. So that's my 2 cents on the whole feminism thing. And now here's the thing. The slogan when you talk about making America great, because I'm going back to these white women again. Because the reason I'm going in on them is because we already knew what white men were going to do. But white women have fooled us and had a lot of us thinking that they were aligned and they were this and they were that and they were fighting for us, and they went right in them polls behind closed doors. It was like Trump. So here's the thing. When you think about the whole phrase "Make America Great Again," I honestly believe, we already know it meant make America white again, make America in the position where you don't have to be politically correct, where black people stayed on their side of town and they weren't in the way, and when we were the only ones, when white people were the only ones on TV and on the radio and they called the shots with everything, which they still kind of do. But when you talk about make America great, I think a lot of people think back to the 1950s and 60s because that is a time period right after World War II where America was in like an economic boom. You know what I mean? One, we destroyed all of our competition during World War II because the whole world was blown up and bombed and nuked and everything else. And so America stood pretty, we were pretty good as a country. We weren't really affected negatively aside from us losing 230,000 troops. So, America was in a position where there was a booming economy, and this meant that you could still have not single parent households, but like individual incomes, meaning there was one income household. The women were not really working. There were women who were going to school and becoming teachers and nurses and getting the jobs that men were allowing them to get during that time period. But a lot of women were staying home. And this was because financially you could do that. This was a time period where, one, you could buy and pay for a house in 5 years. You know what I mean? You could buy a new car every 2 years. You could go to college and have it paid off and not have to take out loans because college, depending on what school you went to, some people were only paying a few $100s a semester for college, and this was a 4-year. And so this is a time period where you had the housewife, meaning this is the time period where soap operas had sky-high ratings and daytime television had sky-high ratings because a lot of white women were at home. At home, you know what I mean? They were at home, they were chilling, they took care of their family. Father came home, dad did all the work, and mom got to stay home. She took care of the family, she raised the kids, this, that, and third. The family goes and takes a vacation every other year. Life wasn't too shabby. And so for a lot of white women who are currently in these working class positions that they hate, they're at Walmart being disrespected every freaking day. They got to work these jobs where men are disrespecting them. They got to do all these things that require a lot of hard labor. Mind you, they have kids that they're trying to raise, but they can't afford the daycare services. They can't afford to take the kids to the dentist and everything else like that. Make America Great didn't sound too bad for them. And they knew that if they went ahead and voted for Trump, if he's going to bring the jobs that he's going to bring back, because a lot of people are thinking, he's going to bring back those jobs we had in the 50s and 60s, and we're all going to be making so much money and living off one income again, and maybe you don't have to work anymore. A lot of white women are willing to give that up. You know what I mean? And so that, in my opinion, is why a lot of white women voted for Trump. It had nothing to do with them, oh, I distrust Hillary. Because at the end of the day, you voted for Trump? You know, somebody who has, what, 75 pending lawsuits, somebody who has pretty much committed every possible offense you could commit as a presidential candidate, and you still voted for him. So that just kind of shows you where people are. But anyway, going into the now. Because I don't want to turn this into a whole blame game, but really, because we already know who, listen, as far as the blame game, as I said, only one demographic of people voted for Trump. So if you want somebody to blame that demographic. So I do empathize with the white Americans who did not vote for Trump and who are outraged and offended and disgusted. I rock with you. That's cool. But listen, have a conversation with your friends, because two out of three of y'all voted for Trump. So now when I go into a room and it's 4 of us and I'm the only black person and there's 3 of y'all, I gotta be like, okay, now which 2 of y'all think that I that there's no law and order in my community, and that I live on Hell Street in Chicago, and that I shoot and kill people, and that I'm lazy, and that I have nothing to lose? Which 2 of y'all think that? All right, I don't feel like playing Russian roulette with people, so that's probably, I'm not really rocking with that. But my thing is, what I do want to say is, and by the way, I wasn't even really big on Hillary. I wasn't at all, and so, but it is what it is. But the question is, so what do people do now? What is the now? And listen, I can't speak for white people because I kind of want to watch them lay in the bed that they made for themselves a little bit. I just want to sit back and watch, because one, white people ain't never had to really struggle for anything on a structural standpoint. Yes, there's a thing called, economic downturns and recessions and stuff that white people do end up being impacted by. But when it comes to the struggles in America, nobody has struggled like black people. Nobody has struggled like a black person living in America. And so a lot of us, to be honest, when you're looking at these protests, it's not a lot of us out there marching and saying, not my president, because black people already recognize when it comes to these elections, we always get the short end of the stick anyway. It's nothing new. And that's what I want a lot of black people to understand. I know a lot of us are disappointed, but I think this is almost a good thing, because now the Democratic Party needs to recognize that y'all have been selling people a false hope and a false dream for the longest, and people have finally caught you on it. You know what I mean? And so black people, for us, I'm like, stop being so dependent on both parties. I know we're not really Republican, but I know the majority of us are Democrats. And a lot of us vote blindly Democratic. And to be honest, the Democratic Party is just as racist as the Republican Party. The only difference is the Republican Party is up front with their racism. The Democratic Party, they at least lure you in and they get your vote, and then they go back to their office and they never see you again until it's time for the election again. So now, while the Democratic Party is in turmoil and they don't know what to do with themselves, this is the time that you hold them accountable for their actions, and you let them know, we have continued to give you our support since what, Kennedy? And so now it's time for you to actually do what you claim you're going to do. But I also want us to get in the habit of understanding that we have to do things for ourselves, because these politicians are not thinking about us. We're not on their to-do list. And so for us, in our community, our job is to, one, educate ourselves, raise our children the way that our children need to be raised, practice group economics, keep our money within our community. I know white people think that's racist, but it's not. Keep our money within our community, let it cycle, do whatever it needs to do, and we just have to continue to work on being great. Because at the end of the day, we are one resilient demographic of people. For all the shit that we got to deal with, we bounce back every single time. We have real struggles that we deal with. And so white people get offended when I say they don't have real struggles to deal with, because listen, when you take away the financial stuff, which is something that everybody who's not in the 1% are dealing with, what do y'all struggle with? Y'all get pissed off because Beyonce performed Formation at the Super Bowl, and y'all think it's the end of the world, cop killers. And I'm like, if you look at the demographic of who kills cops, that's y'all. That ain't us. So yeah, when I'm talking about struggles, it's more than just economics, because I recognize that, to be honest, there are more poor white people in America than poor black people, but that's just because of numbers and demographics and population size. But percentage-wise, yeah, it's about the same. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, it's more than just economics, okay? Sometimes the struggle is just peace of mind, something that black people in America have never been able to have, because we have to deal with so much nonsense. Like, to be honest, I want to fly to Seattle and go fight everybody in my mom's office, because one, my mother is, and not to tell all her business, but she is in a position of senior leadership within her organization, and she is the only black woman there and the only black person in her office. And she was telling me how, when she went to work on Wednesday, all of the men were purposely trying to get under her skin, because one, they don't like her, clearly. They don't like the fact that she's over them. And so, I mean, they were locking arms and dancing in circles, and they were just having a good time when she got to the office. And it's things like that get under your skin, So when I'm talking about peace of mind, the peace of mind can just exist in your own skin. And I always feel like you have to put your guard up or be, on the defense. The peace of mind to know that if I go in an elevator, I don't have to worry about a white woman clutching her purse or pulling her kids closer because she thinks I'm really about to do something. The peace of mind knowing that, you know, when you just go into any, it's like when you open a history book or you go to school and you open a book, you recognize that you're represented in that history book because the people in your demographic have contributed more than enough to this country to be in that book and are more deserving to be, you know, they're more than deserving to be in that book. The peace of mind to know that if you get pulled over by a cop, you can rest assured that it's because maybe you actually did break the law and it's not because you're being racially profiled. Or maybe it's because the cop just wanted to let you know that you had a broken tail light but you know, you were a great driver, keep up the great work, I want to give you a certificate. You know how they do a lot of white people and stuff. The peace of mind to know that, you know, your culture is represented and respected on a macro scale. That's something that we've never been able to get because people have taken that from us. And looking at just how this election is going and how America has turned and watching kids be taunted at school and told that the wall is going to be built and they're going back to wherever they go, that's the stuff other groups of people have to deal with. Like when you're talking about some of the struggles that different groups of people have to deal with. When you talk about the Latino community and those who immigrate here from Central America and places like Mexico, anybody who has immigrated to the United States and lived in the United States for more than 13 years who's come from that area actually end up in worse health than they were before they even left. Okay? And the reason why is because the stress and the hard labor that's associated with the jobs and the life that they have to live with and the lack of respect and the lack of feeling of belonging that many of them deal with, that affects them internally. And so there's been studies and it shows that immigrants or immigrant families who come to the United States, especially the men who come to the United States from Central American countries, they end up in worse health after 13 years than they would have been. Like their health would have been better had they just stayed where they were, even in the conditions that they were in wherever they came from. And the same can be said for black women. Black women age faster than any demographic on the country on the inside, not on the outside, because you know we got all black women and black folks got all kind of magic tricks where, I don't know if y'all know, but I'm actually 46. No, I'm just kidding, but you know, black people, we look good when we age. But on the inside, black women age the fastest on the inside. It deals with the stress that they deal with matriculating through society. Lots of the heartbreak and the mental exhaustion of having to deal with disrespect. Because to be honest, black women, as I said, are the most disrespected demographic in the country. Next in line, and then after that are black men. But, you know, that is the reality of what is. So, white people, I know y'all are pissed about, some of y'all are pissed about Trump and everything, and then, you know, it is what it is, but listen, your demographic, your collective showed the rest of us where y'all stand, and so if y'all notice that a lot of your friends who are minorities are kind of looking at y'all sideways, and they're not inviting you to, they don't want to come to the company potluck, and they don't want to sit with you and eat kale chips or whatever, hey, listen, we're all trying to reprocess and restructure how we think, because we have to do that in order to protect ourselves. But anyway, at the end of the day, you know, things work full circle. We'll see where everything goes. But yeah, this election, very interesting outcome. And as I said, America has showed you where they stand, and America once again has stood in its own truth. And I am not shocked. And I hope the rest of the world understands that the viewpoints of the American government do not represent the viewpoints of all the people who live here, even though America seems to do that to the rest of the world. Anyway, I'm out.